to start the gauge porcelain installation of 6mm porcelain over the Schluter prep shower. A couple things I'm going to go over first is our substrate prep and the things that we do to successfully install porcelain. When you're getting your substrates ready to do porcelain, especially 6mm, 12mm, I don't care what thickness it is, your substrates need to be flat. The proper substrate preparation is 1/8 inch and 10 feet. So that means your substrate needs to be flat. No deviations, there's no room for spot bonding or any of that stuff. When it comes to porcelain, porcelain is supposed to be full troweled with an adhesive or a thin set. So we're either going to use a Basti set, which is a flexible adhesive. It's only used for wall and ceiling applications. We're not using that today, but we do use that a lot in our installations. For today, we're going to be doing thin set, which is going to be the double cone method. The first thing we got to do after we install our substrate correctly, waterproof our shower, we're going to do what's called an SSD. What we're going to do is we're going to take a sponge, we're going to wring the living hell out of it, get all the water out of it, just enough to take the dust and give the substrate a little bit of a drink of water. The reason why we want to add a little bit of water to the mix is because the thin set will start to flash over and dry. What we're doing is kind of controlling the flash of that, so it doesn't flash on the back of it and keep on. Too much water will be considered a bond breaker. So as Justin wipes this down, I wipe my hand across it. If I see shimmer or water on my hands, that's too much water. That's considered a bond breaker. If we were to trowel thin set on that with that much water on there, it would stick, but a couple days later I could throw a gravel on it and I could pull that panel right off the wall. So too much water is bad. Just enough is right. He's going to dry it off with a towel. He'll hit the substrate too. When we're working over fleece-covered boards or concrete-covered boards, what we want to do is we don't want to add too much water, because what will happen is that water will wick back into that fiber, and you can actually, when you go in thin set, that water will come to the surface. So we got both substrates wiped down, and when you trowel thin set only, we're going to do both the substrate and we're going to do the back of the panel. So you have to do both. You can't just do one and the other. When we use Basti set, it being adhesive, it doesn't follow the thin set rules. We can do either the wall or the back of the panel. But it's a different type of adhesive. So we just have to also mind that substrate flatness, because if we're using less adhesive, we're not going to be able to take care of that 8 to 10 variance that we're allowed. So we want to make sure that the prep's even better. What we're going to do is we're going to burn the substrate and the back of the panel, and what I mean by burn that in, we're going to use the flat side of the trowel. It doesn't matter. As he does this, he's going to work that thin set in the whole area that we're working on. He doesn't necessarily want to spread the whole wall. Since we're not ready to do those pieces, we might spread 2 or 3 inches past where that panel's going to stop. But as he does this, you're gonna hear a sound like it's scratching on that substrate. You want that noise, you want to hear this, because if you're just doing this really light, you're not working it into the substrate. You're not working into the mechanical fastening of both products. How many people are out here installing gauge porcelain on the floor, walls, ceilings? Okay. When you're doing this, not all thin sets are created equal. You can't use the cheapest bag from Home Depot or Flooring Court. You're going to want to get a thin set that is purposely built for gauge porcelain. Today we're using All Set with the Schluter system over their system using their thin set. They're going to be able to qualify us for the lifetime warranty. Their thin set has been remanufactured the last couple of years to kind of come into the compliance of gauge porcelain thin sets, meaning that it has a thixotropic property. What that means, once we get these two troweled and we go to touch both surfaces together, he's going to do what's called directional troweling. We're going to vibrate and thump the panel in. That thixotropic property allows that thin set to re-wet down, and then it melds together. It's taking those two semi-dry surfaces. It's still wet to the touch, but as you vibrate it, it loosens back up. As he finishes this up, he's going to start troweling that. I'm going to do the back of the panel. panel and the wall trowel, I'm going to go over a little bit of troweling technique. As you can see, we troweled the same direction. That's called directional troweling. A lot of people want to do troweling like this, and they want to do vertical troweling. They think that's going to help. It doesn't help, it just traps more air. The reason why we're troweling the same way, the shortest distance in the panel, is because we want to work from the center out and expel all that air. We want to collapse all the joints on the thin set. The other thing we're doing by double combing both of this, the ANSI requirement for a build bond code of thin set is 3/16 of an inch. So always use a Euronotch trowel, the approved trowels, Euronotch, flat notch, there's a couple other ones. Don't just use a 1/4x1/4 that the shooter guys gave you at the demo. Use the proper trowel. A lot of the times I see coverage issues, what people are doing, they're doing this, they're doing swirls, it's trapping all that air. It's not doing anything for you. That's an adhesive thing, that's a carpet adhesive thing. So a lot of people see that and they just think, oh, you just make swirls. Those swirls, straight lines. The other thing, if you had a wall that was 60 inches, or a panel that was longer and you couldn't trowel all the way across it, what you want to do is stop in the middle of it and create a spline. So you would trowel this way and this way on the back of the panel of the substrate if your arms couldn't reach it. They say anything that's over 21 inches wide is supposed to have a spline in it. I can reach across a 34-inch panel and keep this at a 45-degree angle so the technique's proper. So I can go further than that 21 inches. But always directional troweling. Sometimes you'll find yourself, if this piece was here, this and that, like when we go and put this piece, we'll actually trowel vertically. So we're going to change the direction of trowel as we install these pieces. So just keep that in mind. Usually for a piece, bigger than this, we would put a support rack on it, something rigid, the panel handler. If this was a C-notch cut, I would put structure support all the way over it. We cut this in Kansas and sent it here, so it would come in one piece. You're gonna vibrate it. So now that we're pushed against the wall, we want to make sure we're in position before we final embed it. What I'm going to do, since I have the ability to lift it and push on it at the same time, I'm going to try to manually close most of those by lifting it about 3/8 of an inch, working that air. I'm putting pressure on it. Justin's going to finish vibrating it in. He's going to start from the center, then work each one of the quadrants out. And as he's doing that, he's pushing against the wall. That machine is both vibrating and thumping at the same time. So it's activating that fixotropic property that we talked about earlier. It's allowing that thin set to re-wet down and for that to all become one uniform coat. When doing porcelain, guys, the other things that we want to abide by is expansion. So around the edge of your substrate, a minimum of an 1/8 inch expansion joint. We're a little tighter around the curb and down at the bottom where the banding was added. I thought we had counted enough for that, but this also goes and shows you that, template after your prep's done. Don't try to do the prep forward of or the cutting forward of your prep because maybe a wall needs to be tuned up and it's a 1/4 inch smaller. Now your piece you have to rip down a 1/4 inch. So just template after your final prep. As he does that, it's making the air come out the edges. Trowel this. Next thing we're going to go over is trimming. We're going to set this piece, we're going to go over a lip tuning control system called MLT. What it is, it's a manual seam setter per se. Our thin sets and adhesive takes 24 hours to cure. So we use, traditionally in your your countertop business and you're seaming something together, you're in and out in them a couple hours. When we're doing our grout joints, because all porcelain needs grout joints, okay? We're putting grout joints off the corner of this niche, mainly because it's going to be, you might have some wall movement. This might be an exterior wall. We're putting those tight joints in, and what that's going to allow us to do is the porcelain's not going to crack. I've seen a lot of times where the porcelain's cracking on those outside walls around the niches just because that exterior wall takes on so much movement from the sun or the heat, the cold, that it moves that, and we end up having problems. So anytime we can opt or put a grout joint in off the corner of those niches, we do. A lot of times we'll do wall-to-wall niches, so it's just a miter joint. Do we have any questions so far? Okay. His question is a fireplace-related question, installation. His question was, how do you get the prep right, and how do you go about that? When we walk into a fireplace, what we like to either see is a concrete board screwed off all the way through the whole substrate, because we have pipes and towel roll that we can screen over that to make the substrate both flat. All I care about is flat. Plumb is something the framer should have figured out for us, should have been caught along that building process. Now, if we're selling the plumb project, we rip all that board down, we're going to plumb that wood up, and we're going to do it. But usually we go in, if there's cement board up, we can screen over. If it's off a quarter of an inch or something, we have rendering mortars that can go take that quarter inch and we can square it up. We get that flat and within tolerances, the installation is just the same. Now with fireplaces, the top of your fireboxes, any high BTU fireplace, those really big Da Vinci 63 inch, 90,000 BTU, fireplace, a whole house, you put grout joints up there. I opened up a manual one day, I was sitting there with the customer and I were going over the installation, I opened up the manual and I flipped it through. It even called out 3 cm stone to have seams at the top of that firebox. So that tells me even if stone breaks. It's not about the product, it's about the installation. So by putting those tight joints at the top of the firebox openings, we're mitigating any kind of cracking down the line. And that's, if it says to do it in stone, that means it's not just porcelain. Because a lot of people say it's porcelain cracks. Stone does too. So if you at least adhere to those manufacturer guidelines and recommendations, you'll be successful. Now with fireplaces also we use Basti set, because if you're doing a 30-foot tall fireplace, you don't want to draw a thin set on the back of the panel and the wall and then hoist that thing up there. A lot of our thin sets for gauge porcelain have anywhere from a 30 to 60 minute open time, where a Basti set with the right humidity, say 50% humidity, you can have up to an hour and a half open time, because it's an adhesive that comes from the glue world, not really a thin set that comes from the cement world. So it's a little bit different. It's also got a Class 9 commercial fire rating, so as far as spectability, you can use it in flame areas, and it allows for that structural movement. So his question is, he adheres a 1/2-inch safe board on the back of 6mm porcelain. It's a great question. How do you install that? I know people out there that are doing it, that are installing it right to the wall with silicone. Is that right or wrong? That is 100% wrong. You're giving that panel that support, and you're still spot bonding or siliconing it to your waterproof substrate. This substrate's not meant to take silicone as an adhesive. No waterproof system is that I know of. It's not recommended to use. So even with SafeBoard, I still full trowel it. That's maybe when I would use a Basti set product. So you're only troweling one side. But it still needs to be fully embedded. It's the same thing with 12mm porcelain. It's not written in the spec to be installed like this, but seeing the manufacturer claims and inspection reports, personally, full troweled 12mm should always be done. The same way we do this, so there's no failures. Porcelain does slow down the fabrication shop on installation and fabrication. It's something that we all have to learn how to deal with. And it's not by dealing with it by cutting, shortcuts and alleviating, certain steps. So going back to the MLT, we were talking about how you guys use seam setters to set your seams. We're going to use an MLT, which is mechanical liquid tuning. It's one of the only systems that's approved by majority of manufacturers to be used. A lot of people use spinners or wedges. The problems with spinner or wedges, when you get that thin set next to that plastic and you go to remove those the next day by kicking them off or removing them, having that thin set next to that edge of that porcelain, that glazing, you can possibly chip that. Now we're going into a brand new installation with repairs that we already have to do. The customer didn't buy that. So spend a little bit more money, buy this product. What it does is it has a strap that goes beyond it. It has some mechanical fastening where the other lip screen devices are solid plastic. They might have a hole, but when we look at coverage issues on porcelain, you can't have less than 85%, or in a 2 square inch area, you can't have less than 85%. Most of those lip screen devices that don't have mechanical or holes through it, that are just flat plastic bottoms, by the time you get within that 1 square foot, you've already completely violated the standard. And your claim and warranty by the manufacturer will be denied. It's the easiest way for them to walk away from it. So a 10-cent clip difference, that's all it is. It's 20 cents for 10 cents. So you're not spending different. The other thing is when this is removed, we remove it with a gun. Justin's going to go ahead and start putting these on. The gun has 4 settings, 1 through 4, for different, thicknesses and how hard you got to pull on it and move stuff. But don't leave the gun on S. S is for snap remove. If you leave it on S and you go and hit the gun, you'll actually remove that strap. You can't take the panel off. You can't slide a new one in because you're displaced the thin set. Again, you're lessening your coverage. Put it on 2. We also have metal inserts in there, which the metal inserts help keep the force on the side of the strip. It operates really much like a zip strip. You can hear it kind of making that noise. We also have clips without the metal inserts. It's just we opt to put the metal inserts in because over time the plastic wears out. So the metal keeps it more viable for longer period of times. If there was any lippage in there, we would go ahead and vibrate over the seam to get that worked out, the same way that your air sucker's moving and you adjust that while it dries. Again, we're going to leave this in for 24 hours. Then set adhesives for 24 hours. That doesn't mean your guys get done troweling the job at 5 o'clock, leave at 6, come back at 8 the next morning. That's not 24 hours, guys. Okay? That thin set's going to not be dry. So give it that full 24 hours, remove this stuff, and then go ahead and silicone the grout. Most of our grout joints on something like this, we would go ahead and run white silicone and change at the vein to get that look. Or if we wanted to, in some cases, we've gone through and deck seamed it with epoxy. I don't necessarily like doing that all the time because if that wall does move, it's just going to separate and it's going to come out. Your porcelain won't crack, but it will separate that.